playing as black in round 4. This was the first game of Sunday. So round 1, Friday night was a win. Round 2, Saturday morning was a draw. Round 3, Saturday afternoon was a loss. So I was kind of 1-1-1 at this point. And this opponent was an adult who was rated 1150, which I was like, yes, 4-digit ELO opponent, an adult, let's go. And E4, extra let's go, because I can Caro that ish all day long. All book moves, take. I don't know what I was doing here. I just like all my Caro theory out the window, because this is not the best move. Bringing a knight out is best move. I think actually you can do either knight, but this one is slightly better. So sorry, Alex Banzia. But I close my pawn chain. Like, we're still fine. This is dead equal in an opening here. My bishop gets kicked. And the age-old question of, do you take or do you drop back? I don't know if there's a rule of thumb to follow of which is better and when, because it's kind of a crapshoot for me. I'm just like, I don't know. Okay, Prof says to drop back, but why? Why is your vote for dropping back here? Anova would take. And Amuser, the reason knight c3, the reason knight c before bishop g4 is because of h3, g4, knight e5. Ah, yeah, that makes sense, because if drop back, push, hit. Yeah, that's unpleasant. So, Muser, you would drop back here, even with that line in mind? Interesting. So, yeah, I spent a little bit of time deciding here, and I was like, okay, well, it was kind of an exchange-ish Caro, right? If I'm getting my terminology correct here, kind of an exchange Caro, an exchange Caro you often take here. So I was like, okay, I could take, but like, I don't know. But whenever you have the option to take a trade, you can almost always find the right answer by evaluating the following things. Okay, some wisdom gems coming in here. The time it took for the pieces to get to those squares, the things those pieces could do in the future, the squares those pieces are controlling now. Can go bishop f5 and trade light squared bishops. Bishop f5 here seems premature to damage my central pawn structures. Exchange Caro, you thought the rule was to take if white's bishop is on b5 or the knight is on c3. I will have to revisit my literature, because my memory of Banzia's course is he says that in exchange Caro you often trade. But in the advance you take? Ah, okay. Yeah, that's one thing about my Caro course is I've been going through my variations in the move trainer, but I have not revisited the accompanying literature in a while, and I think my ideas are getting rusty, even if my move intuition is getting stronger. So I will revisit. But I ultimately decided to take here, which was fine. Engine thinks that dropping back to h5 was best, so give yourself a little pat on the back if you said bishop h5. So queen takes, and I bring my knight out, which is best. They pin, I unpin, and this is all pretty fine. Engine thinks that kicking the bishop here first would have been better. And now I spot that this pawn is undefended, and maybe there's some kind of like tactical idea brewing in the center. So he takes care of that hanging pawn. I kick the bishop, he drops back, I castle. I was a little nervous castling into this, but it is best because even though all their pieces are over here, none of them has a clear line of sight to actually attack my king. So I castle, and he castles queenside. Ooh, spicy. Spicy. And I felt like that was not a great idea for him because I have options. Nothing is clear at the moment as far as what those options could be, but yeah, castling line wasn't the best here. Engine says that was an inaccuracy. And I make it an accuracy too. Engine thinks that b5 is best here. And if the bishop takes, actually, I'll just show you. If here and takes, why does that work? Knight takes d4. What? I haven't followed this line yet. Queen a5, a4, a6. Okay, this line continues for a long time, and engine is engineing. I don't feel bad about missing this in the game. But there was a brilliant sacrifice here, apparently. So where were we? Yes, I stab in the center, and I'm like, okay, these could be a little scary. If he doesn't account for that, there's a great fork for me. So his best move here is probably to take. And then he went bishop takes f6, and I was like, seriously? Because that is not the right idea. It's not the right idea. Because now my bishop is on a great diagonal. It's blocked at the moment, but it's actually not the ferocious pawn chain it claims to be because of this pawn that was kind of misplayed a moment before. So I felt really, really good about my chances at this point in time. So he takes that pawn. I take with the knight. Yes, I have an isolated queen's pawn. We all know I'm not great with those, but I thought it was worth it in this case because it grabs his bishop, and now I'm the only one with a bishop on the board, right? Because this is a fork, you can't save both pieces. So he attempts to save his bishop by going queen f5, and there is an amazing move here. Because what do we notice about the queen's location? She doesn't have many squares to move to. Blocked, blocked, blocked. Can't go there. Can't go there, right? So there is a spicy idea here. G6. And where does the queen go? She has no squares to go to. Oh, you might think at first, oh, queen can go to f4. No, she can't. So the queen is 100% trapped with g6. It is trapping time. Yeah. What an insane tactic, right? And this was move 15. Hello, Cruz. I'm doing a tournament recap today, so no blitz. But Friday I'm doing blitz, and Wednesday I'm doing a viewer tournament, by the way. So tune back in for some blitz time then. But in the meantime, learn all of my classical mistakes because they were plentiful. So queen is trapped. The game is mine to win. Except that I didn't spot it. I know this is a tactical weakness of mine. I don't know why trapped pieces is a concept that I just can't visualize in the moment, but especially over the board, the visualizing was not there. So I took a bishop. Dang it! Would have been great. too busy doing chess.com puzzles instead of Lichess. Yeah, even on Lichess, I miss the trapped puzzles often. And actually, I've been doing a lot more of the focused training sessions with Lichess puzzles, where it's like you focus on a particular tactical motif. And I think that's been extraordinarily helpful. So I think I'm gonna write that down for myself. Trapped pieces. Just looking for like what creates a trapped piece, and if I can spot what makes it, I don't know. So this is actual game move. I took the bishop, they took the knight, and unfortunately, material is equal here. But I do have the bishop. I have the bishop in a better structure. So I push that pawn, and the idea behind pushing this pawn is if they take, well, I've got a great army of pieces lined up. There's ideas here, right? B5 is the engine's preference instead. So my opponent disallows like a take here. He doesn't want to open his king up, which is very fair. But I do have this really annoying d-pawn. And after the game, my opponent told me that this pawn caused him so much stress. Like the entire game, his entire worry was about this d-pawn, which brought me joy because the entire game I was stressed about losing this pawn. So this pawn was the headache of the game for both sides. So he moves the king off of the c-file, which is a good call because with my rook lined up, you know, there could have been tactical chances if he hadn't taken care of it. Additionally, if the king is on a dark square, my bishop might have ideas. B5 was the threat. Yeah. So let's actually... Why is B5 good here? Because to me, on the surface, that appears to be a free pawn. But rook B8, queen C5, rook C8, so you just kind of chase the queen around. Queen B5, A6, so you lose another pawn. Rook A8. And the reason that doesn't work is because now there's ideas here. Okay, I'll need to explore that a little bit more, I think, post-stream. Because this is another pawn idea that I am so rigid in my understanding of pawns, and I will not give a pawn up for what seems like nothing. And Prophet gets the pawn storm going. It's good if he takes it, opens the file to the king. That's well said. And I need to figure out how to develop my thinking on pawns because I know that I'm so rigid. I'm like, I can't give up a pawn. I can't do it. Material. But would have been strong here. And my bishop, I agree. My bishop is amazing. I loved my bishop. It was doing such a great job. So we were here. And why did I make this move? I was trying to prepare defense to d4, the headache of the game. I figured if my queen was on d7, then we have some options to add here, because if the knight moves, I was very nervous that this pawn would fall. And if that pawn fell, then my opponent would have a 3-on-2 majority that even though I have the bishop to their knight in an endgame, actually, if the knight was here and we went for a trade here, my bishop would be gone and it would be completely drawish, which I felt like I had a win here, so I didn't want that pawn to fall. And Amuser, you wouldn't worry about the d pawn while the queen is behind it because if they pin if they take. But if the knight is on f3 or b3, the knight can take, and then the queen can slide out of the way, and the rook is covering it. So I thought it was important to adequately defend that pawn so it can it could continue to be a nuisance for white. Oh, this was the most annoying move that I didn't anticipate. How can a quiet pawn move on g3 cause me such a headache? The problem for me with g3 is my bishop's scope is severely limited now. Sure, it still has the long diagonal, and it could have diagonals here, but the problem is this diagonal is completely cut off from me now because this push would be supported by g3. And I was very annoyed by that move. So I continue my idea of adding defense to the d4 pawn. Engine thinks that g6 would have been stronger, kind of countering their quiet pawn storm with my own, also creating a little hidey hole for my bishop if need be. They're attacking my bishop. I drop it back. I drop it back to a completely fine diagonal for me. Great scope here, great scope here. And where is this knight gonna go? Nowhere. Not on my watch. No siree. So opponent moves a rook. I think that they're gonna try maybe their own storm for a second. And here, I decide to kick the knight. Bats to JM. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. So I go f5. Engine doesn't love this move. Engine's like, that's good, I guess. But I just wanted that knight to not be all up in my business. I think it's not the best move for a couple reasons, but one reason, I think about my collab with Stellar Chess, where he made the very great point that pawns can't move backwards. So any pawn move you make, it is there permanently. So you need to feel really, really confident that your pawn move is going to serve you now and in the future. And this pawn move serves me now, but does it serve me in the future? Probably not. So I think for that reason that it wasn't the best move I could have made. Engine thinks that my own pawn storm would have been stronger here. And Amuser, opening up the bishop would be good too. Yeah, so I think you're talking back. Where were we here? Blah, 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 blah. Give him a hook to speed up a storm. That's another idea I need to review is fishing hooks is somehow in my like learning of chess, that concept escaped me. I guess I didn't watch that Gotham video when I was learning chess. So I'm very unfamiliar with the fishing hook idea. So where were we? Oh gosh, spoilers. So we were here. That's right. So I kicked their knight. They retreated to the only square available to them. And here I was kind of a dummy. We all acknowledged my bishop was great. We all acknowledged that their knight was dumb. Why did I propose basically a trade here? I think my idea to propose a trade here was I was very nervous for whatever reason that the knight could be involved in the capturing of my d4 pawn. And I wouldn't have done this if I had played this game again. I don't think I even loved it during the game, but I didn't have any other ideas. But what idea would have been better? You betcha. Pawn storm. So, of course they kick my bishop out. And I take the knight, which at this point in time was best move. But we all know that this should never have been a move that I should have been in a position to make, right? But the king or the queen takes, and I move my queen here. Did I write myself a note of why? Nope, I didn't. I guess to defend this this pawn I pushed early. Good job, pass me. And I loved this move. Engine agrees. Rook c6, which out of context might seem very, very odd. What? Why rook f6? Well, it's kind of creating a very flexible rook lift. Rook can go this way. Rook can go this way. Rook can go here to support that sad little d-pawn. So a very powerful rook lift that is also supported. So white can attack my rook. And best move. I'm a chess genius sometimes. So white decides that pawn storms are a good idea. And my rook lift continues lifting. I have the open file. Haha. 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 So the challenge for the open file begins. I support my captions making it look like I don't have a queen. Really? I do, and my queen is going to play a very important role in a moment here. So I moved my queen to defend my rook in kind of an oddball move, because yes, she was still defending from f7, but it was almost a waiting move I was making. Engine thinks that queen e7 would have been stronger, kind of forcing the issue a little bit more. But I didn't want to do queen e7 because I thought it dropped this pawn. But that's silly. Why is it silly? Let's follow it. If here, then there's a battery and I win a piece. So yes, you get a pawn, but at what cost? I didn't calculate that in the game though. So I went queen f6 saying, okay, go ahead, take my rook, I dare you. And so he accepts that dare. And I take, and the reason I was waiting for this move is because queen e4, I was very excited to make that move because the queen is pinned to the king. So I make that move, and I am just like crossing my fingers and toes that my opponent, who has been playing pretty well, decides to take here. Because, oh my gosh, can you imagine if my opponent takes on e4 and I can take here and I have two pawns in the center? I would just be gleeful here. Connected passers in the center, supported by a rook from d8. Oh. But my opponent, also being a rational, competitive chess player, realizes all of that and says, no, thank you. Oh, so he adds a defender to the queen this way. Actually, I'm looking at this now. Engine thinks taking e4 is best move here. That's shocking to me. But you can see that we're approaching an endgame, and the pawn structure is very interesting. We have the same number of pawns, but they are not distributed evenly. And I think that if I had two passers in the center here, it's not super clear cut because their rook is lined up here, and they have 3 versus 2. So, and the king is close enough to catch, right? So maybe that's why the 2 in the center actually it's not decisively winning for black. Is that the move I made? That is the move I made. Wow, okay. It's fine. Queen g2 would have been best here, threatening some pawns. But I'm like, okay, look, we have this little pawn in the center that all my hopes and dreams are kind of banking on. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for this to happen, I'm just going to start pushing some pawns. Maybe I've learned my lesson from round 3, where I should have pushed pawns much earlier than I did. So white takes, I take back, king moves out of the pin, so technically this queen can go wherever she pleases now. So I decide he moved his king, I move my king. Kind of entering an endgame, even though queens and rooks are on the board. Pawns are pushing. My king is moving up to support my pawns. Now this is a pivotal moment in the game. G4 was a mistake from white. Why is it such a big mistake? Well, if I took here, that would be awful. So I shouldn't do that. I don't do that. So I decide, yes, my best move here is to get the queens off the board, because I'm kind of tired of my queen having to do some babysitting here. So I takes, and now here's where this mistake, the G4 mistake, comes into play. Why was G4 such a big mistake? Prof spots it, F4. F4 creates a passed pawn. And then it's looking pretty dang brutal for white, because this pawn is still a problem for white. This pawn would be a problem for white. And I am so mad that I didn't make that move in the game. My blitz brain kind of took over, and I was like, oh, recapture pawn. This would have been game deciding move, basically. Unstoppable promotion. In this 3 versus 2 doesn't matter, because my pawns are faster, and they just don't have enough time. Unfortunately, this brings the game back to equal. It's okay. Pawns are tricky. And the sort of good news is G4 is not easy for white to defend. So that was my plan this whole time. I kind of hear my plan was like, oh, take, I win pawn. But yeah, F4 would have been better. So that's my idea. King comes in, and now I'm winning G4. Whoa, no, that's not right. For some reason, my analysis cut off. This is not the end of the game. So, we're gonna have to, in real time. Where did my score sheet go? There it is. Oh, I'm sorry for this. I have no idea what happened with the brilliantchess.com interface. So let's move back here. My apologies, everybody. Okay, why is it still saying that? That's not right. So king takes G4 is move 38. We have so much more game to go. King E2. King F4. Okay, so we'll kind of continue from here. I'll talk about the moves as I make them. But these pawns in the game, I realized that this game was like not my tribute to Naroditsky, because that sounds like way more serious than it actually was. But these kinds of passed pawns, I had just watched Naroditsky's Endgame video on passed pawns like 2 weeks ago, and he calls these pawns trouser pawns. He says it's based on a Russian chess word. And there's not a direct like chess translation equivalent in English, but he calls them trousers, where it's pawns that are isolated, separated by 2 files, and it's winning if you have this type of passed pawn. So I realized I was in a winning endgame. Yes, it's 3 versus 2 here, which could be a little scary, but my pawns were closer to promoting. The thing that complicated the endgame for me was the fact that rooks were still on the board. I haven't done a ton of studying for endgames when rooks are on the board and cannot easily be removed from the board. So it's not a clear endgame, even though like clearly there's some promotion opportunities, right? Hello, e-repair, how's things? Things are good. I'm reviewing the tournament I played this weekend, and this is round 4, and just a very interesting endgame. I had a little bit of trouble with my saved notations, so we're we're live transcribing from my score sheet as we go. Profiteer, the best chess Anna. Yes, move over, Cramling, Rudolph, and I don't even know who else. Nice, did I win? I did not win my section. I win some games. And this game at the moment is a winning endgame for me because I will promote first. But it's complicated to get there. So let's see what exactly happens. First of the 5th. This is the 4th game of the 5th. And if you did miss any recap games and you want to see them, I'm going to put them on YouTube this week. So you should follow my YouTube channel if you are curious. Do I have a YouTube command? Oh, sorry, there was a microphone issue. Oh, of the Annas, first of 5 Annas. I will take that. But I actually really like all of the Anna chess creators. We're all great. Does that work? Nope. Nope. Oh, I'm so good at streaming. Look at me self-promoting successfully. Look, we're gonna, what's my channel name? I don't even know. Robots for Brunch on there. If you really are curious to subscribe. I don't post very often, but I post tournament recaps pretty consistently. Okay, anyway, let's get back to this endgame. So this is move 39. And in this position, white gives a check with the rook, which I was anticipating this is best move. But after this check, the rook doesn't really have a follow-up because my king can go to e4 and can't check from here because my pawn will prevent that, right? So their rook goes to the 7th rank, which I was a little scared about because I had to make a decision here. Okay, you are targeting both of my pawns. I cannot easily defend them. Do I continue to push? Do I protect with my rook and make my rook really, really sad and passive? So I spent some time here trying to calculate because I wasn't low on time, but of the 100-minute clock, I think at this point I was down to about 20 minutes. And endgames require a lot of calculation. So rook g8 is what I did. Prof, you're correct. D3 check was the only move here to maintain an advantage. It's very, very important in this position to keep the tempo, right? First of all, this gets my pawn closer to promotion. Second of all, it doesn't give them time to grab this pawn. And third of all, if a pawn was on d3, my king is still protecting it. And if the king decides to blockade it, I still got another little guy to do an important passing job. But I didn't do that. I thought rook g8 was winning. It's not, it's back to equal. And why is it back to equal? Because eating both of these pawns while my pawn is on d4 and not on d3 means I don't have the tempo to promote first, because we have to acknowledge the fact that white has 3 pawns over here, and pretty soon they're going to be connected pass pawns, right? So super interesting endgame with imbalanced passed pawn structures, right? And then let's see. So they go rook e7 check. I go king f5. They take my pawn here. And trying to do this live is a little challenging. I'm like, okay, I've got my passer. Still have two passers. King is the only one kind of playing defense on that side of the board. So there are chances. No, it's dead equal, but that's okay. What happens next? The rook gives me another check, and I decide to go king. Is that what I do? Yeah, king e6, because I'm like, look, I'm tired of being checked here. Your rook has no more play on these two files, because I will take your rook if you try that. So the real reason my opponent checked me there was so that his rook could get back to his side of the board and help play defense for my trouser pawns. So I decide, okay, yeah, sure. My king can play too. And we're kind of having a little bit of like a war of attrition of can one side cave before the other side? Because this is incoming, this is incoming. 46, okay. So I say, okay, we're pushing, we're passing. That's the threat. Rookie one check. What an annoying move. Because my opponent did a really good job with this particular type of tactic. It's a deflection tactic, right? Where my king can't continue to guard this pawn. So unfortunately, the trousers have lost one of their legs. And I'm like, okay, well, I can extra super double defend my g-pawn, and you still have to account for this, which means that you don't have time to account for this. So yeah, it's still dead equal. It's a draw. And okay, so that was move 47. King f4, rook f1 check, king e5. I say, fine, I'll continue to support my trouser. And now white makes an error. Even though this gets their pawn closer to promotion, it ruined an important tempo. Because in this tempo, I think this is the move I make, 49, I get to push my pawn. This is terrifying. My pawn is one square away from being a queen. And yes, the queen won't stay on the board because they would take and I would take, but then it would be a rook and two pawns versus three pawns. So only move here, really, is to blockade that pawn so it can't promote. And from this point, I make this move to kind of get my rook closer to the action, kind of trying to coordinate the army closer so that my king can, you know, that's not where he would go. He'd go here, right? That was my entire thing. This pawn was going to act as a decoy. Doomed to passivity. Very well put. Yeah, white has to guard. This rook can't help anything. It's a long game. Let me turn my notes over. So then king goes e2. Like, okay, my king can enter this fight as well. But the problem with trouser pawns is even if the king decides to come over here and we have a big trade here, then this pawn has time to promote. And I calculated all of that and realized that. And then I make a mistake, guys. I do. I make a mistake. I thought that this deflection worked, and it doesn't. Because, I mean, the king can't take here. So what can the king do? the king can march towards my pawn. Actually, that wasn't best move. This is a miss. The best move here would have been the king to blockade that pawn. Because then where's the forward progress for me to make? Neither of my pawns can move, but my rook has to continue guarding this pawn. My king has to continue guarding this pawn. And in the meantime, we're both kind of like doing this with my pawns, and these pawns can promote. So eventually these pawns would get lost, these pawns would get lost, it would end in a draw, right? But that's not what my opponent did. He went king f2, which was very important for me because it allows my king to get closer. My king is not only closer, but my king is also protecting the rook, which didn't have defense a moment ago. So my opponent tries for the counterplay, pushing their own passed pawn, and I was nervous about it. I was. And here, critical move. Critical move. I'll give you just a moment to spot it. There's basically only one move here. While you think, I'll sip some water. Critical move. Rook e3. What? Rook e3? Really? Yes, rook e3. Rook e3 is the only move. Oh, nope, that's not it. Oh, that's great. And as you can tell, I'm making these moves right now. This isn't how the game actually went. But the reason all of those were good moves is there's a mate threat also. If my opponent, for example, had pushed a pawn here, this is mate in 1. So it forces rooks off the board. Or not off the board per se, but like it allows my rook to get in, and then I'm assuming there's enough of an ability to promote that passed pawn. And added benefit, c6 cannot promote. But that's not what happened in the game. Okay, so that was what actually happened, 52. Then we go king f4. Then c6 happened. And then, this is right. So best move would have been rook e3. I went rook f3. And my thought process was if take a check, move take, and then I have time to push this pawn. But my opponent doesn't have to do that. 53. Instead, my opponent went here. And what an annoying move. Best move here, because I can't make any forward progress with either of my trouser pawns now, without losing this one. So, yeah, dead equal here. But I decide, okay, I'll give this check. Best move, but it's too late. It's too late. Still a draw because the king is in front of my pawn. This pawn is undefended, so I have to account for it. And then... Oh, I'm sorry, they don't go there. They go here, which is a much better move. Because the reason it's a great move is if my king moves, this rook falls. So pretty important job. So king d2, and then I go, oh, king f3. Guys, this was really painful, and I didn't realize it was really painful just yet, but after the game, this was really painful. Why is this a huge error? Because my opponent was a brilliant deflecting tactician. G2 is undefended here. And my opponent spots it. This is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant because I can't take here without losing this. And I absolutely cannot lose my rook because c6, my rook has to be able to stop c6. So my trouser has fallen. My passed pawn is going to fall. Like, there is no salvaging this game at this point. Oh, so painful, guys. So that was move 56. So yeah, rook takes, and then I'm like, okay, well, I have to stop c6. So I bring my rook back, acknowledging the fact that I'm lost now. So c6. Can't quite figure out what this move is. I have c6 twice in my notation, which doesn't make any sense. c7. Yeah, I think it must be c7. You're right. And then I go rook e8, which was an inaccuracy. I should have brought my rook here, but I think at this point, like, I knew I had completely effed up. And it was just like, I don't even, like, it just kind of deflated. All of my fight was out of me at this point. But this is what happened in the game. So their rook comes back to support their pawn. I try to blockade, but the unfortunate thing about this blockade, it doesn't work because their king can take with opposition. So, and their king is in range to grab my rook. Oh, this game is painful to talk about. So I, like, I do the best thing I can. I try to walk towards, oh, nope, that's not what happens. So we're here, 61. I go here, and then rook d7. Great move, because now they can go d8, which is protected. Well, not quite yet. The king has to get involved, but it will get involved. So what moves can I make here? My king doesn't want to get further away, so I go a6. A little bit of a lost but Zugzwangy move, right? And so their king slides in. And then my only move here, like, I guess I could lose another pawn, but yeah, it's lost. So then they go here. I take the pawn because I don't want a queen. I'd rather have a rook on the board. They take, obviously. And I go here, which was just a dumb move because now they can grab my other pawn, and I resigned. So, I'm keeping, like, knocking my microphone. Sorry. So that was the end of a very painful loss. I'll show you the shape of the game. I'm not gonna lie, I left the playing hall and seriously considered withdrawing because at this point I had back-to-back losses, and this one was so painful because I knew it was winning for me at one point. And the only reason I didn't withdraw on the spot was I didn't think I would be able to tell the tournament director I was withdrawing without bursting into tears. I don't know if this happens to anybody in chat, but when you have to cry and, like, the floodgates will be released if you have to say any words, that's always been the case for me. So I just, like, very, very quickly walked out of the tournament hall, and we had it was a really long game too, so we had like an hour until round 5, And so I texted my husband. I was like, I think I'm going to withdraw. That this is just, I'm stressed. This isn't fun. Back to back losses. Like, why do I do this to myself? Like all of the negative spiraling thoughts. And he, in his infinite wisdom, he said, I'll support you with whatever, but I think that in the long run, you'll be happier if you just see it through, finish round 5. Um, so I was like, okay, you're right. So I went, I got some lunch, kind of collected myself, I analyzed the game, and kind of got into a salvageable headspace. And when I got back to the tournament hall, I talked to my round 4 opponent, and he asked me if I had reviewed the game, and I said yes. And the fact that it all came down to this pawn move or this king move is it's just insane. Because this is drawn, this is winning. Um, End games are so freaking tricky. Like, so, but I had a great discussion with my opponent. We didn't like sit at a board and talk about the game, but we just talked about chess. And I noticed his notation book was very thick, and he was on one of the final pages of it. So I asked him, like, hey, how long have you been playing over the board chess? Because it looks like maybe a little while. And he said about 4 years. And he plays mostly because his son plays, and his son is really good, like rated 1800 over the board, and so he was in the tournament. Um, and then he asked what my online rating was, and I told him 1850 for rapid, and he was floored. He could not believe. Well, actually, he said like he couldn't believe because for a lot of the game, he was really really struggling, and his son actually came over to spectate at one point. Probably here. Oh, fool's mate, thank you for the follow. Um, and his son came over to spectate, and after the game, his son said, "So you lost, right?" and my opponent was like, "Actually, no." So yeah, we just had a great discussion, and we're from the same area, so we talked about chess events, and it was just a very lovely chat to talk to an adult, talk to a like-minded um, chess enthusiast, and talking to him made me feel really good about this game because we both played a great game of chess. Endgames are very tricky, like Prof says. Yeah, especially rooks and pawns. Precise, calculative play. Like I think a lot of these missteps were only move type situations, and you know, it's hard to spot.